Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to break down how Ajax knocked Juventus out of the Champions League. We're going to look into the first half, see how both sides look to approach the game, and why the first half was so tight and cagey. Then move to the second half and see why Juventus' tactical change ended up haunting them as Ajax were able to score another away goal and knock them out of the competition. But before we get to today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at Juventus, no real surprises here, 4-3-3, Dybala, Bernardeschi, and Cristiano Ronaldo up front. In midfield, they went with Pjanic, Matuidi, and Emre Can. Then we move to Ajax, also more of a 4-3-3, Ziyech, Neres, and Tadic up front. In midfield, Schoen, Van der Beek, and Frankie de Jong. So now let's look to the first half, see how both sides look to approach the game, and why they went into halftime tied 1-1. So when we get to Juventus against Ajax, let's look to the shapes. We have Juventus in what should be a 4-3-3. Dybala was playing through the middle to start the game, and that was pretty pivotal because then you have Ronaldo out to the left, you have Bernardeschi to the right. One of the key talking points from the first leg, there were two in particular. One being the fact that Frankie de Jong had too much time on the ball in midfield to control the tempo of the game. The second being Van der Beek being able to shut out Pjanic and then break him behind him to offer somewhat of a threat at the Juventus backline. Here, Dybala playing through the middle, his role was to sit deeper and to sit on Frankie de Jong to ensure that they couldn't play out of the back and that he was unable to really make an impact from deeper positions. Juventus often dropped off into more of a 4-4-2 without the ball. They had Ronaldo a bit higher. They had Dybala sitting on de Jong. Matuidi would push out to Veltman. Eventually, as the game wore on within the opening 10 minutes, we saw St. Graven come on for Mazraoui, and that was pivotal for Ajax because now they're missing Mazraoui and Tagliafico, and their fullbacks were a bit more deeper and playing with a bit more caution. However, you have them there in that 4-4-2. Even from goal kicks, we saw Juve press a bit higher. You would see the center back split out. You would eventually see Ronaldo and Dybala push out to them. And then you would have Pjanic step in, or you'd have Emre Can step in. And that's how they would go about it. Sometimes we'd see Shona push in as well to try and make that difference maker. And you'd have Bernardeschi step in with Pjanic. So they were trying to get de Jong on the ball, but they couldn't. And that was a good ploy from Dybala, who for the most part didn't really offer much of a threat from an offensive standpoint, but here, keeping de Jong out of the game, he did a pretty decent job, and that was pivotal to what Juventus were trying to do because, like I said, ball pushed out to the left, that is Matuidi's job to shut that down. Bernardeschi on the right, and that's kind of how they went about their business without the ball. So that was pivotal for Juventus. Besides that, when you really look at what they were trying to do, Juventus, with the ball, you have Emre Can and you have Pjanic switching positions because, like I said, Van der Beek is stepping to Pjanic. At times, if that wasn't the case, he would step to Can and they'd have de Jong step to Pjanic as well. And on the opposite side, Shona and Matuidi was somewhat of a similar battle where they were going man v man against each other, tracking each other's runs and moving forward from there. Ajax, like with Juventus without the ball, Ajax defenders, center backs in Blind and De Ligt were allowed to push forward, but they were struggling to find space because, like I said, de Jong wasn't involved. And they couldn't get Ziyech or Neres really going. But without the ball, they dropped off into more of a 4-5-1. Ziyech and Neres did a good job of ensuring that De Sciglio and Alexandro didn't offer much of a threat or any sort of overlaps. And then, like I said, Tadic dropping off. If they did drop off into more of a deeper 4-5-1, what would happen is that Tadic would be sitting towards the deepest midfielder, whether that be Emre Can, who often did drop off a bit deeper. He kind of replicated the similar role that he did for Juventus against Atletico, where at times he would drop into that space to allow De Sciglio to push forward. But besides that, they were struggling to create chances as well. Both sides were. And that was because the improved shape, we knew what we were going to get from Ajax. At times, they did look to press. We saw this more in the second half where Tadic would stick to his man, and then sometimes you would see Ziyech push forward to more to the center back, or sometimes you see Nerej push forward to the center back, keeping into central positions and trying to cut off their passes as well, especially if you have Pjanic or Emre Can dropping into that space. But when we look to the build-up to the goals, you have to think that both sides struggle to create chances. We look at one chance where you have Nerej poke the ball into Tadic, backing up into Bonucci, then he gets the back heel back, and eventually the block shot falls to Van der Beek. Should do a better job there. The build-up to Juventus' goal was probably one of their real or sole legitimate breaks prior to the goal, and what we see is Pjanic just finally gaining a yard, and because they're caught narrow, he switches the ball to De Sciglio, is able to push it past his marker into Bernardeschi, who runs off with Blind and cuts in, but is unable to really fire a shot on goal, and is blocked, which eventually leads to Ronaldo breaking free to not a free header past the keeper, Onana. And then we look to Ajax's opener. Shona gets a simple squared ball, skips past his marker in Pjanic, switches the ball out wide. The cross eventually falls back to Ziyech, and his shot towards the box ends up falling into the path of Van der Beek, who is onside, and he's able to fire his effort past the keeper there. But when you really look at it, that was kind of how the first half went. Juventus struggled to create chances. Even when Dybala was dropping off a bit deeper, you had Daley Blind pushing towards him. There was no real threat of Juventus attacking them with pace, so Ligt and Blind weren't really troubled. Ronaldo was dropping off a bit deeper. We didn't see much from Bernardeschi. The midfield were really struggling to win that battle, despite the fact that they were doing a good job on Frenkie de Jong. And when you look at it, both sides, you never knew who was going to win going into halftime. Yes, Ajax were eventually going into the game, but you look at Juventus, they have Cristiano Ronaldo, and you had to think one manager would have to make a big change. So now let's get to the second half, see how both sides look to change the game at halftime and why Ajax were able to kill it off. So when we break down the second half between Juventus and Ajax, the key talking point here is when Dybala did come off, they brought on Moises Kean and they became more of a 4-4-2, and this was a big problem for them based off the fact that Dybala was doing a decent job on De Jong when he was dropping off, and now you have two strikers that aren't really going to track back, and this benefited Ajax here because when you look at it, yes, you have them both up front, but now that frees up space for De Jong. And if you have either Matuidi, Pjanic, or Emre Can push forward, that creates space for Ajax players to drop into that space. De Jong is capable of dealing with the press, and he's able to evade players that do step to him, so that's not an issue. And that was basically what happened here, because when you look at it, if you have De Jong with the ball, he's able to control the tempo of the game. That's the first mistake that did happen, and that's what happened in the first leg at Ajax, and you would like to think that they did feel that they should have got something out of that game. The other thing here is that as the game wore on, we saw Ziyech and we saw Nerej moving into those central zones. So you have those two moving into those central zones. If you have a player stepping forward and you have Dusan Tadic who can drop off deeper, that is a big problem because the Juventus center backs aren't going to try to drag themselves out of position because of the threat of Ziyech and Nerej, who could dart into that space as well. We did see often those two, if the ball was pushed out to the right-hand side, you would see the other opposite winger drift into that space as well to create overload so that they could then switch the play. That was also a key trait of their attacking play throughout the game and throughout this leg. And when we look at that, you have to see that eventually they're going to create more chances, and that's basically what happened. But Juventus didn't do themselves any favors, because when you really do look at it, if they do press from the front, we saw this happen once, Moises Kean and Ronaldo stepping to the center backs. You have De Jong dropping off. This time you had Matuidi step to him. All it took was Shona to drop off to create himself an angle. De Jong plays it to him. He gets it back. And what happens there is, again, look, those two wider players tucking in narrow, passing outlet to them. If they don't tuck in narrow, Tadic could drop in, and that was where they were finding their space. So that was one key thing there. And when Shona, if De Jong was on the ball in deeper positions and couldn't find an outlet, sometimes you'd see Shona drop into that space as well to make the difference, to help Ajax push forward. When we look to some of their chances, we look at three in particular. One, most of them do stem from Juventus mistakes. The first one, Simply Pjanic dropping off. You have Van der Beek and you have Tadic stepping to him, and he tries to play a cross-field pass that is intercepted by Nerej. And what happens there is that he drives forward down that right-hand side with De Sciglio a bit higher. He runs at Bonucci, he cuts in on Pjanic, and he slides it to Van der Beek, who sees Ziyech dropping into that space in behind Alexandro, plays it into him, breaks in on goal, should score. Szczesny makes a key save. Shortly after that, we do see Bernardeschi driving from the right, trying to cut in, and he is dispossessed by Ziyech, and Ziyech now drops it back off to De Jong to evade Pjanic, and he squares it to Van der Beek at the edge of the box. No one steps to him. He curls a superb effort on goal that is pushed over the net. The manner in which they do score the goal, just like Ronaldo's opener, it's De Ligt, free header, able to make the run, towers over Alexandro and Rugani, unstoppable. Szczesny can't save it. When you look at the change that they do make, they eventually bring on Cancelo for De Sciglio, and he did at least deliver 2 quality crosses to Keane and Ronaldo that they did not on goal but couldn't test Onana. And when you think about Juventus' sole chance here, simple long ball, Ronaldo backing in on Blind, able to turn him, and you have Keane running off De Ligt. De Ligt tracks it well, and perhaps because he does, Keane fires his shot wide of the net because of that pressure and that sliding tackle. But besides that, Juventus really had problems here. They couldn't create chances. They were giving away the ball in midfield. Ziyech and Nerej were able to drive forward at every opportunity on the counterattack to cause a threat. One final chance besides the one that Pjanic ended up clearing from, again, Nerej breaking past De Sciglio, does see De Jong able to control a simple punt into midfield, nods it into Van der Beek, gets it back, locates Tadic dropping off a bit deeper, plays it to him. Tadic tries to clear the ball over Rugani. Rugani ends up clipping it back to Ziyech, and he clips it over Rugani for Nerej, breaking in behind him, but he fires his shot. He doesn't even get contact with it. He doesn't hit the target, so that is a big problem there. But that is how they were going about their business, and after they got the goal, they simply dropped off a bit deeper, like I said, into that 4-5-1. They had the counter-attacking threat, and again, it just stayed the same. They pressed Pjanic, Matuidi against Shona. They were unable to really get Emre Can involved as well, and Ronaldo was just simply starved for service. They weren't creating any chances, and they lacked control of the game, and perhaps Dybala's inability to play in the second half really did frustrate them and cripple their chances of going ahead, because besides that, De Jong had more space and freedom to control the game, and Ajax were able to bypass Juve with quick 1-2s, and they probably should have scored more goals. But let me know what you guys think. Does this loss mean it is a failed season for Juventus? And what about Ajax? Can they go on to win the Champions League? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.